make this?
You know, the governors are going to have to behave. The mayors are going to have to behave.
When the time is up, they'll have to go home. Otherwise, they'll have to talk to Secretary No.
Will you be boycotting this year's World Cup? Sepp Blatter suggests that maybe you should be.
The largest sporting event in human history kicks off in 19 days, 48 teams, 104 matches, and America's own hotel industry just called it a non-event. That's the President of the United States talking about the cities hosting his own World Cup. That's the Vice President at the official welcome meeting telling the world's fans not to overstay their welcome. And that's a former FIFA president telling fans to stay home. So here's the question this whole video is going to answer. The World Cup is supposed to be the loudest party on earth. The flags, the chants, the chaos. So why does this one feel like somebody turned the volume down? Why does the biggest tournament ever assembled feel somehow like a secret? It isn't one thing, it's six. And once you see how they stack on top of each other, you'll understand why a lot of the world has quietly decided to watch this one from the couch. Let's get into it. Start with the part that almost nobody connects to soccer. The United States is hosting a World Cup while it's at war with one of the teams that qualified for it. Iran punched its ticket back in March of 2025. Then this spring, the region caught fire, and by the middle of May 2026, multiple outlets, including reporting cited by the New York Times, were warning the conflict could reignite at any moment, with oil hovering north of $100 a barrel and the Strait of Hormuz a choke point everyone was watching. Now think about what that does to a tournament. Higher oil means higher airfares, which means the long-haul fans who travel for a World Cup start doing the math and staying home. But the Iran problem goes deeper than ticket prices. Iran is on the United States' full travel ban, so Iranian players get a special exemption to come and play. Iranian fans? They're not getting in. A team is showing up to a party where its own supporters are locked outside the gate. And then it got stranger. According to ESPN and the Associated Press, in April 2026, a Trump special envoy floated the idea of simply swapping Iran out of the bracket and putting Italy in instead. Italy's own sports minister called the idea shameful. On top of that, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Iranian players would be welcome only as long as they hadn't served in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The problem? That criterion could disqualify Iran's own captain. As of the time of this recording, whether Iran will even field its full team is genuinely unresolved. So before a single ball is kicked, one of the 48 nations is showing up under a cloud of war, missing its fans and unsure if its best player can take the field. That's not the usual pre-tournament buzz. That's the first reason the room feels cold. But the war is only the part you can see on the news. The quieter machinery is the paperwork. Here's where it gets confusing on purpose, so let me make it simple. There are three separate walls and almost everyone mixes them up. Wall number one, the travel ban. It started at 19 countries in June of 2025, and by December it had grown to 39. 4 nations that qualified for this World Cup are on it. Iran and Haiti are fully banned. Côte d'Ivoire and Senegal are partially restricted. Wall number 2. In January 2026, the State Department paused immigrant visas for 75 countries. That's the 75 country number you may have heard. At least a dozen of those are World Cup qualifiers. Wall number 3. The bond program. Fans from 50 countries can be required to post a refundable bond of up to $15,000 just to get a tourist visa. Do the math on a family of 4 from one of those countries and you're talking tens of thousands of dollars. Refundable only if everything goes perfectly on the way out. Now, FIFA and the administration will tell you they fixed this. They rolled out something called FIFA Pass to give ticket holders priority visa appointments. And in May 2026, they waived the bond for fans from competing countries who'd bought tickets and signed up in time. That's real, and it's worth saying. But here's the catch the press releases skip. Priority for an appointment is not the same as approval, and it doesn't punch a hole in the travel ban. At many US embassies, the wait for a tourist visa interview still runs past 3 months. There's a new $250 visa integrity fee stacked on top. And social media screening means what you've posted online can sync your application. Ask yourself how that lands on a fan in Dakar or Tehran reading the news. The message they're hearing isn't America welcomes the world. It's prove you'll leave, pay for the privilege, and watch what you tweet. So a lot of them just don't come. That's the quiet you can't film. It's the supporters section that never fills up. And remember, That wasn't a leak, that was the vice president saying it out loud at the welcome event with the FIFA president in the room. So the war scares off the long-haul travelers, and the paperwork blocks a chunk of the rest. And the people who run world football noticed, which is when this story stopped being about logistics and became about something close to a rebellion. In January 2026, a Swiss anti-corruption lawyer named Mark Peath, a man who once ran FIFA's own governance reform committee, gave an interview that lit the fuse. His advice to fans was 4 words: stay away from the USA. Then the heaviest name in the sport's history backed him up. Sepp Blatter, who ran FIFA for 17 years, posted that Piath was right to question this World Cup. When the man synonymous with FIFA tells you to skip FIFA's tournament, that's not noise, that's a signal. It spread fast. A vice president of the German Football Association, Oke Görtlich, compared the moment to the Olympic boycotts of the 1980s and said the discussion needed to happen now. Over in the British Parliament, MPs openly debated whether the home nations should withdraw, with one of them saying the only thing the president responds to is his own pride. In the Netherlands, a petition urging the Dutch Federation to pull out blew past 174,000 signatures. In Germany, a poll commissioned by Bild found that 47% of Germans would support a boycott if Trump moved to annex Greenland. And in South Africa, opposition leader Julius Malema told his national team to refuse to go. Now, I want to be fair, because this is where a lot of YouTube videos cheat. No national federation has actually withdrawn. All 48 teams are still officially in. Britain's Foreign Secretary rejected the boycott idea outright, and France's sports minister did too. The boycott is a fan movement and a politician's argument, not an official walkout. But here's why it still matters for our question. You don't need a single team to drop out for the atmosphere to die. You just need a few 100,000 fans around the world to quietly decide it isn't worth the hassle, the cost, and the risk. The boycott talk is the thermometer, not the disease, and the temperature is dropping. Quick thing, if you're finding this useful, do me a favor and hit subscribe, because this story is changing by the week and we are tracking every twist of it from now through the final. Okay, back to it, because so far we've talked about the rest of the world. The strangest part is what's happening inside America's own borders. You'd think the one place guaranteed to be excited about an American World Cup would be America. Instead, the host cities spent the spring fighting with their own federal government. Congress had set aside $625 million to help secure the 11 US host cities. Then the money just didn't show up. It got frozen during a 76-day government shutdown, and a New Jersey congresswoman whose district hosts the final flat out accused the administration of withholding it for political reasons. The funds were finally released in March after a meeting between Trump, the FIFA president, and the head of the White House task force. And the political pressure was not subtle. The president openly mused about yanking matches out of Seattle and Boston over their Democratic mayors, saying he'd ask FIFA to move the games if the cities didn't, in his word, behave. Imagine planning your city's biggest event for years and hearing the head of state float pulling it on live television. Then, in April 2026, more than 120 civil society groups, including the ACLU and Amnesty International, did something almost unheard of for a host country. They issued a travel advisory about visiting the United States, warning about device searches, immigration enforcement, and risks to certain travelers. The White House fired back hard, calling the advisory ridiculous scare tactics, and insisting that legal visitors have, quote, nothing to worry about. Both of those things are now part of the record, and the viewer can decide which one they believe. And then there's the pettiest, most relatable insult of all, getting to the games. The train from Manhattan to the stadium that hosts the final normally costs about $13 round trip. For the World Cup, New Jersey Transit first floated $150. After the governors of 2 states and FIFA itself complained about a chilling effect, they walked it down to about $98. The Transit CEO swore it wasn't price gouging. It was just, in his words, recouping costs. On top of that, several host stadiums quietly killed tailgating, the single most American pre-game ritual there is. FIFA says there's no official tailgating ban and that it's a local decision, which is technically true and also not very comforting if you're the fan who can't tailgate. Now, not everyone rolled over. New York's mayor announced a lottery of 1,000 tickets at $50 each for local residents, calling it the price of 5 lattes in New York City. It's a nice gesture. It's also 1,000 seats in a tournament of millions. a patch on a much bigger leak. So the home front is fighting itself over money, security, and trains. Which brings us to the number that ties this entire video together, because all of this fear and friction shows up in one place that doesn't lie: the receipts. If the World Cup were really going to be the party FIFA promised, you'd see it in the bookings. You'd see flights filling and hotels selling out. Instead, you see the opposite. In 2025, international arrivals to the United States fell 5.5%, according to the Commerce Department's own trade administration, cited in a Congressional Research Service report. That made America the only major destination on Earth to lose visitors in a year when global travel grew. Visits from Canada cratered. One University of Toronto study using cell phone data found Canadian trips to US cities down about 42%. A Skift survey across 5 countries found nearly half of respondents said they were less likely to visit the US under this administration. And aviation analytics firm Cirium found European bookings to the US for this July, World Cup month, down more than 14% year over year. Here's the one that should have set off alarms. In May 2026, the American Hotel and Lodging Association surveyed roughly 200 hotels across all 11 host cities. Nearly 80% reported bookings tracking below their forecasts. Some markets describe the World Cup as a non-event. That's the non-event line from the cold open. Now you know where it came from. The people whose entire job is to fill rooms for this thing are quietly bracing for a letdown. And it isn't just foreign fans. For the first time in World Cup history, FIFA used dynamic pricing, the same surge model as concert tickets. Seats for the final were listed as high as around $33,000. The cheapest tickets to the US team's own opener were $1,000. When even the president says he wouldn't pay that price, you've got a problem. And the market agreed. By mid-May, resale prices had fallen around 22%, with at least 9 group stage games still sitting on more than 1,000 unsold seats each, including games involving the United States. And while all this was happening, the federal government cut $80 million from Brand USA, the very agency whose job is to market America to international tourists, right before the biggest tourism opportunity in a generation. So that's the quiet, measured in dollars: empty hotel rooms, falling resale prices, unsold seats, and a tourism agency that got defunded on the way to the party. Which leaves one last question. With all of this going sideways, where has the one organization that's supposed to protect the global game actually been standing? The answer is the strangest part of the whole story. While fans were being warned away and cities were begging for their funding, FIFA's president, Gianni Infantino, was doing something different. He was getting closer. FIFA opened an office in Trump Tower. At the December 2025 draw, FIFA handed Trump the first ever FIFA Peace Prize. There's been a replica World Cup trophy sitting in the Oval Office for years, and Politico reported that Infantino logged more FaceTime with Trump in 2025 than any world leader on the planet. So when human rights groups begged FIFA to ask the president for one thing: a pause on immigration raids during the tournament, an ice truce so families could attend safely, what did the most powerful man in football say? Nothing. No public guarantee. As of this recording, the request just hangs there, unanswered. And that's the whole story in one image. A governing body so invested in pleasing the host that it went quiet on protecting the guests. The reason this World Cup feels muted isn't a mystery. It's a war that scares off travelers, 3 walls of paperwork that block the fans, a boycott movement that chilled the rest, a home front fighting its own government, an economy voting with empty hotel rooms, and a referee who decided to befriend one of the team's owners instead of blowing the whistle. The flags will still be there in June. The games will still be played, but the roar that's supposed to come with them, a lot of it already decided to stay home. Here's what makes this worth watching anyway. Everything you just saw can still change between now and kickoff. The ceasefire could hold or collapse. The lawsuits over those funds and those bans are still moving, and the fans who do show up might just be loud enough to drown all of it out. We're going to be here for every bit of it, so if you want the next chapter, the empty stadium reality check, the boycott update, the visa numbers as they land, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the quiet before this tournament might be the most interesting story it tells.